Welcome back to another Tactical Fly Fisher video, everyone. I am Devin Olson, the owner of Tactical Fly Fisher and your host for this video. Over the last year or two, I've been thinking about a very specific topic as I've watched some other anglers fish. It's a follow-up to a video that I did a few years ago, and that video was 5 tips on how to land more fish. And I've had a lot of good feedback on that video. A lot of folks have either sent me an email, given us a call, or dropped a comment saying that they went out and used the tactics that I provided in that video and they're now landing more of the fish that they hook. And if you want to watch that video, I have dropped a link in the video description below. I certainly suggest that you watch it in conjunction with this video that we're going to talk about here. But this video is going to talk about a very specific point in that process of landing fish, which I didn't really cover in that last video once I watched it. And that is, how much line do you need out when you actually go to make that final net of the fish? And one of the things I've noticed as I've been fishing with other anglers over the last couple of years, whether watching them, just random people that I run into on the water, or friends that I'm fishing with, or even anglers that I'm controlling at competitions, I've noticed that even high-level anglers sometimes struggle with having the wrong amount of line out when they go to make that final netting motion of the fish. And when they have not enough line out, the fish kind of lifts up in the air, but they're not able to reach their net far enough to get that fish. Or if they have too much line out, then they have to reach way too far behind them. The rod tends to fold on itself, and they lose direction with the fish. They're not able to actually direct the fish into the net because the rod ends up folding one way or the other kind of weirdly. And also, if you have too much line out, it's a really easy way to break a rod. And we've had a few customers who tend to break more rods than others, and I would bet if you fall into that bracket, you're probably having too much line out when you go to make that final netting of the fish, if that's the step where you tend to break your rods. So I'm going to talk about today how to find that exact Goldilocks amount of line out and what's going to happen if you don't have that right amount of line out, and how you can recognize when that's the case and then maybe fix it. So let's take you through some examples of this. We went out the other day and shot just me landing some fish. And I'm going to take you first through some slow motion examples of me talking you through what I'm seeing on camera as I'm watching myself land fish and whether I have the right amount of line out or too much or too little. And then I'll take you through a couple of just regular frame rate on the water examples right at the end where I describe what I'm seeing and how I make that final adjustment to get the right amount of line out. Hopefully these examples will help you next time you're on the water to know whether you've got the right amount of line out, and if you don't, you'll be able to make that correction. So let's get cooking. Let's go watch me land some fish and jump into those examples. Let's start with this first example of when I've retrieved too much line. So I've just set the hook into a fish, and now I need to retrieve some slack. So I pinch the line against the cork with my rod hand, and then I pull line or strip line in with my left hand, but I do it below that right hand so I don't have to let go, and I've always got control of the line against the cork with that line trapped under the middle finger of my right hand. But here I've stripped too much line in, and now I've lost shock absorption, and frankly I've lost leverage to try and bring that fish towards me. So I should have stripped less line in to keep that butt section of the rod about perpendicular to the fish. And now, as I go to net this fish, you'll see that as I try to raise the rod to bring it towards the net, the fish just kind of goes up in the air, and it's sitting there flopping, dangling below the rod tip. If I were to let about 6 to 8 inches line more out, I'd be able to move the rod back behind me and the fish would slide towards the net. But here, because I haven't done that, I'm reaching out with that net, and as I pull the rod up, all it does is just bring the fish out of the water. And because it's a small fish, I can get away with this, but I would probably break it off if it was a larger fish. All right, let's have the next example here where I have not retrieved enough line. So I have a little bit larger fish on the line here, and as I go to make the net, you'll see the rod tip folds back on itself, And in just a second here, it's going to swipe side to side. That rod tip is going to move laterally, kind of out of control, right behind me to its left. Yeah, right there. See how it folded on itself and moved to the side? That means that I lost the leverage on that fish and the capability of directing it where I wanted it to go. Now, if I'd stripped in another 6 to 8 inches, the rod tip wouldn't have folded on itself, and I could have moved the fish basically with the butt section of the rod, continuing it towards the net. Now I'm about to try and make another attempt. You can see that the rod is really folded on itself, and this is an instance where if you had a rod that had a little bit bruise in it or something like that, you could easily break the rod by folding it too much on itself here, because I'm really having to reach back behind me, and that rod folds back on itself in a really narrow J shape. Once again, in this case, if I'd stripped in another 6 to 8 inches of line, I wouldn't have had a problem. Another thing that I noticed when I went to net this fish here, the leader hit me in the chest as I went to actually put the fish in the net. If you're having that happen, that's another diagnostic characteristic of when you have not retrieved enough line. So pay attention to that rod. If you feel that rod tip wiggling side to side, out of control when you net the fish, or if you hit yourself in the chest with that leader, you know you need to strip in a little bit more line when you go to net your next fish. All right, now let's look at the last slow motion example here, where I'm going to strip the right amount of line in. So I've just hooked a fish. I'm putting side pressure on it to get it across that fast current. As soon as it kind of gets below me, I switch the rod to an upstream position, and I take a couple steps down to make sure that fish stays at least even or upstream of me. And then as I go to prepare to net the fish here, I strip in a little bit so that I have my rod about perpendicular or just slightly less than perpendicular to where the fish is with the butt section of the rod. And then I'm able to lift the rod just gently, and it slides the fish towards me. And with a little bend of the knees, I can slide that fish pretty much right into the net. I'm going to replay this real quick again so you can see it one last time to notice that as I do this, the rod is not folded on itself like in the last example. The rod tip doesn't bend back towards the butt section. It's kind of out towards the trout a little bit. And I don't have to really reach that far behind me in order to get the fish into the net. Now let's cut to a couple of on-the-water examples where I'll talk you through the process in real time. Okay, so I've hooked fish. Right now, I don't have enough line in it, and you can see that the angle of my butt section of my rod is pointed kind of away from the fish. And as a result, the line comes back into me, and even though the fish is here, I would have a hard time netting it without reaching my arm way up. If I strip in 8 inches, now I can keep the net, or the butt section of the rod, about perpendicular or just barely past perpendicular to the fish, and just slide my hand back and the fish comes right at the net. Okay, I've hooked a fish. Let's do it the reverse this time. Now I've stripped quite a bit of line in. If I go to try and net the fish now, the fish comes out of the water and I can't actually get there without really bringing that rod back. I still can't get there. If I let about 8 inches of line out, now I can turn the rod back behind me and slide the fish into the net. Thanks for watching this video, everybody. I hope that you found it useful, and I hope that next time you're on the water, if you're struggling to put those fish in the net at that very last moment, maybe this video will come into your mind and you'll be able to make those adjustments and help you net a few more fish easily and maybe avoid breaking that rod as well. If you did like this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the Tactical Fly Fisher channel, and if you did find it useful, give us some feedback in a comment afterward as well. And then after you've watched the video, come on over to tacticalflyfisher.com, where you'll find whatever you need in our store to help you out on the water or next time you're at the fly tying vise. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you have a very fishy fall and winter. We'll see you in the next one.